Thanks, Dabit. Yeah, I think we can open up the Q&A. Guys, if you have any questions, now will be the time.
Hi, Nader. I have a small question.
Yes.
Right. So the my scenario is I have an existing application which I kind of created a user pool manually, and I have like added some API gateways and all that. Is there a possibility to connect my existing Cognito pool to an Amplify project?
Yes, you can do that. Yes. So you basically have an existing Cognito user pool. You'd like to connect it to an Amplify project. Yeah. So a lot of people use the client alone without the CLI, or they've used the CLI to create some services, and they want to then again, connect some other service into their existing Amplify project. You can do that. All you basically would do is like the Amplify CLI creates that AWS exports file. What you can then do is create your own, also your own maybe external file for resources that are already available, and then put them there, and then basically merge those together when you configure the Amplify project on the client.
All right, thanks.
Another, like if someone want to like look at these codes and actually see how these things can be applied to their production applications, is there some kind of resources that they can follow on and look at the code?
Yeah. So on the AWS Amplify community website, we have a lot of stuff listed there. We're working on a learn section in the Amplify documentation that we're going to list a bunch of example projects. But for now, if you'd like to see example projects, you can go to my GitHub on github.com/Dabit3. All the stuff I just showed you, except for the voting app, is open source. The voting app will be open source once I'm finished with it. And then there's the AWS samples repo, and AWS samples has a few Amplify projects listed there.
Sure, I'll share those links with you guys. And yeah, I have one other question actually, like and now that Amplify supports HTTP resolvers as well. Now and we see like really nice architectures that we can come up with, like with AppSync and also API gateway and all that. So I'm not sure like how quickly you can give me the answer for this. Let's say now, how are we actually look at the authorization aspects of it? For example, now in Amplify, we can add auth directive, and we can add different authorization. So if we want to like flow this authorization over to your over to the HTTP backend, let's say API gateway and so on. So how seamlessly we can do it? Like, is there a particular best practice that we should follow when it comes to handling authorization between AppSync and API gateway? Any comments on that, Nader?
Yeah, so if you're using the HTTP, so you're basically saying with API Gateway and Amplify, we have some. We basically will pass in the headers and stuff for you based on using. If you're using the Amplify client and logging in with Cognito, we send all of that information along. But as far as the configuration within API Gateway, let's say you want to use like the authorization mechanisms within API Gateway, we by default just pass all of that stuff to Lambda. So if you wanted to do like an authorizer, you would probably need to configure that in Lambda at the moment. But if there's something interesting there that you think that we should support, we actually, everything is open source. So the CLI repo would be a good place to open an issue there to kind of have that discussion and maybe get a better answer, because maybe some of the engineers there can answer that question a little bit better.
Awesome. Thanks, Nader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Yasiru has a question. Yasiru?
Yes. Hi, Nader. So
hello.
I have a question for you. So can you share some information about the roadmap with the Flutter client? So
the roadmap?
How long do we have to wait for it? So I think
for which client now? I'm sorry, for the Flutter?
Flutter, yeah.
Oh, for Flutter. Oh, yeah. Okay, good question. That's been by far like the most asked for feature requests in the last 6 to 8 months or whatever. We actually have built a whole team within our team for Flutter that's building it right now. I can't really give a release date though, but it's being worked on, and it shouldn't be like, it'll be this year for sure, but hopefully it'll be earlier than later. But yeah, it's being worked on. I don't really have a date other than before the end of the year. I wish it was earlier.
Okay, thanks, Nader. I have another questions for you. So I am a totally newbie to AWS Amplify. So can you share something about how to implement server-side rendering with AWS Amplify?
Right. Yeah. So we actually have a lot of things that are supported by default for server-side rendering, but there's a few things that are not. Like for instance, authorization. Right now, we're using things like local storage for authorization, but we actually have already work being done for server-side rendering support, SSR support. So now I believe we've already updated a lot of things, and you can actually see the discussion in GitHub. We've already added support for, I would say like 80%, 90% of the Amplify library is now supported on server-side rendering SSR. And you can kind of see where we're at. I think maybe we have another month and then we'll have full support for SSR for the Amplify client. But the other thing is the Amplify console hosting. So right now we support things like single page applications. We also support things like Gatsby for static site generation. What we'd like to support also would be Next.js and the Amplify console hosting. Right now we support Next.js, but only for the static site builds of Next.js. We don't actually support the dynamic routing of Next.js. That's something we actually are already working on as well. And that Next.js SSR support for hosting for dynamic routes should also be done for sure within a couple of months.
Okay, thanks, Nader, for the pretty interesting session.
Yes, thank you for
Okay,
coming.
thank you.
Okay, I think we can take one more question if you have any other questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me? I have a question.
Yes.
This is regarding the offline capability. Does Amplify support for offline capability?
Yes, we have a couple of different SDKs that support offline. We have the AWS AppSync JavaScript SDK, which is kind of something that is a very similar API to Apollo. It's actually a fork of Apollo. We have that on the JS side and also on the native side. And then we actually released recently a new API at the end of last year called Data Store. And Data Store is a fully offline and real-time abstraction that is built on top of AppSync. And it's one of the most important categories that we've added recently. And we have a lot of work being done on it. And we have offline clients.
Conflict resolution, is it included in conflict resolution?
Yeah, conflict resolution is included. We have 3 different types of conflict resolution. We have, we have like an escape hatch, which is Lambda for your own custom conflict resolution. And then we have 2 default conflict resolution strategies you can choose from. One is optimistic concurrency, which is essentially kind of like last rider wins, which will us. And then we have something that's a little more sophisticated. That's really the main one that we use by default. It's called auto merge. And auto merge is using GraphQL fields with something like a CRDT within the field to allow you to have, pretty sophisticated conflict resolution strategy that will not overwrite the entire object if multiple people are making updates. Instead, it will be like at the field level you could think of. So if you have like a type of to-do that has a name and a content, you could have people sending updates to both the name and the content, and the update would be merged at the field level versus the type level.
Oh, okay. Thank you,
Yes.
for your detailed explanation. Yeah, thanks for this meetup. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, guys, are there any other questions? Okay, right. Looks like, we don't have any more questions. So thank you very much, Nader, again. Thank you very much for your informative
Thank you for having me.
talk. Okay.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Bye-bye, everyone.
See you. Bye.